Mindfulness as a global trend in educational assessment and its implications for Steiner education. Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation. Today, we will be exploring a major trend in educational assessment, mindfulness. Mindfulness is no longer a therapeutic tool or a wellness practice. It has become a global educational trend, influencing the way on how schools, teachers, and governmental institutions think about teaching, learning, and most important for us today, assessment. Mindfulness within the assessment principles and practices has a significant impact currently due to education systems all around the world being under increasing pressure to continue meeting the academic outcomes of mainstream education, but also to consider the well-being and holistic development of the students. Documents from the OECD, UNESCO, and national bodies such as ACARA in Australia clearly show that well-being has become a central concern in curriculum and assessment policies. Post-pandemic mask wearing, issues of student anxiety, disengagement and stress have intensified, and mindfulness is often proposed as a solution. We will start this presentation by explaining mindfulness as a global trend in assessment and then evaluate implications on mainstream educational practices. After that, we will analyze the relationships with Steiner education and identify some similarities and differences between the two. In mainstream education, the rise of mindfulness affects assessment practices in several ways. First, mindfulness expands and deepens the purpose of assessment. Assessment can no longer be about ranking students, but rather be a way of supporting their well-being and growth. Teachers will then be required to observe how students manage stress, emotions, maintain attention, and be able to gather this data to evaluate the teaching method. Second, mindfulness will be developed through different forms of assessment. Narrative feedback from the teacher, self-reflective journals from the student, classmate dialogue, and self-assessment will be valuable practices that align with mindfulness as they require presence, reflection, and honesty from all parts. Third, mindfulness will reshape the teacher practice. Teachers will be required to embrace mindfulness in the classroom by reducing judgment, observe quietly, and create an environment that is less pressure-driven and more humane. This practice, already being challenging enough, becomes even more complicated when we are required to create and present measurable outcomes that fit the current institutional systems. From a study performed by the University of Adelaide in 2023, the Resilient Youth Australia Resilience Survey showed from 140,000 students in years 3 to 12 that 27.4% of primary students and 35.9% of secondary students reported high levels of anxiety, depression, or both. This makes it obvious that anxiety is a key issue that needs to be addressed by educational institutions. So, how do we incorporate mindfulness into numbers? Do we count how many minutes of meditation a day can the children do? Or how many of them can report that they are feeling calm? It seems that trying to do that will make mindfulness another robotic activity that will erase the root purpose of the practice. Let's dive into Steiner education now. Rudolf Steiner's pedagogy was born holistic, seeking to nurture children as sovereign, free human beings, recognizing their individuality and inner potential, developing their body, soul, and spirit. It places equal value on intellectual, artistic, and practical learning, fostering a balanced growth of thinking, feeling, and willing. Learning is not confined to academic achievement, but integrates creativity, intuition, and life experiences, leaving us with the purpose of assessment in Steiner schools not being focused on grades or scores, but instead in a qualitative and narrative description of the carefully observed being of the child, really understanding and acknowledging each student's individuality. From this perspective, mindfulness fits naturally, as it is part of the core of Steiner's principles. Steiner teachers are trained to cultivate their own inner life. They serve as a role model of care, authenticity, and presence, supporting each child's moral, spiritual, and social development with a holistic educational journey. In the classroom, Steiner assessment already values the quality that mindfulness promotes. Attention and concentration are nurtured through rhythm, storytelling, and artistic activities. Emotional balance is observed in how the child engages with classmates and through their art. Self-awareness develops through reflection, narrative feedback, and projects that integrate head, heart, and hands. This clearly positions mindfulness in Steiner education as a root principle, part of the structural system. Mindfulness is then not a separate practice, but an implicit dimension of Steiner's pedagogy and assessment. And while mainstream schools may be experimenting with mindfulness as a new tool, Steiner schools have been working with this principle since it was born. So mindfulness has become a global trend in assessment, shifting the focus from purely academic outcomes towards well-being, attention, and emotional regulation. It is significant now because education systems recognize that students cannot thrive academically if they are anxious, disconnected, or disengaged. In mainstream education, this trend is leading to more formative and holistic approaches to assessment, and the challenge for all educators is to articulate this clearly to policymakers and parents, showing how their assessment practices embody mindfulness in a profound and integrated way. For Steiner education, mindfulness offers both validation and opportunity. The practices of mindful observation, narrative assessment, and holistic pedagogy are already central to the Steiner approach. By aligning with this global trend, Steiner educators can show that their methods are not only relevant, but ahead of their time. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.